friends, and welcome to my November wrap-up. To be honest, looking back at this, I feel like I've read some of these so long ago, it doesn't feel like it was November. In November, I did read 13 books, with my main genre being fantasy romance. To be honest though, I slacked on my spreadsheet, so you aren't getting any stats this month, just because I haven't filled in a lot. So I started November off with a fantasy romance called The Song of the Marked by S.M. Gaither, and I did overall enjoy my time with this, but I also didn't love this book. I ended up giving it 3 stars. This follows a world where there is a plague that is killing people off, and we follow our main character, who is a mercenary but has survived this plague before. When the king finds out about her, he ends up ordering her to help figure out what's going on and why this plague is happening, since he thinks that she might be a key to figuring out how to heal and stop this plague from taking the lives of a lot of people, because pretty much no one survives it. Then enter a trusted advisor to the king, who is kind of set to watch her, and of course we have some romantic relationships. I want to say this isn't a bodyguard romance, although me setting it up like that feels like it could be, but it's definitely not. There is some good banter in this. I did really enjoy the moments where our two love interests were together and talking, but I found the moments where they were separate, I struggled a little bit, even though we had some cool plot and stuff going on in the story. I think this author really shines with her character interactions, and sometimes I struggle in the info dumps that we get elsewhere. But overall, I am intrigued to see where this series goes, and I think that it was easy and enjoyable and reminded me of a YA fantasy more than a fantasy romance at times, but I'm really intrigued for the rest of the series. I think it's a 5-book long series, and I do think I will be continuing. And then I read Black Sheep by Rachel Harrison, which surprised me by how much I enjoyed it. I wanted to pick up Rachel Harrison, but I was scared because a lot of her horror is described as more literary horror and a little bit campy at times. It's more of a dark horror to me than that campy 80s style comedy that I think a lot of horror books do have. This is following our main character, who has escaped a cult. She has left the cult. No one no longer talks to her because that's what happens in a cult. And she is just kind of living through her life when she gets an invitation in the mail to her high school lover and her best friend's wedding. It's really weird of someone to be asked to come back to something, because once you're kicked out of this cult, there's no talking whatsoever, so she hasn't heard from anyone in years. But when she gets this invitation, she just has to go and see what's going on, and so she goes back home. Things get wild from there. I really enjoyed the storytelling in this. I liked our main character. I thought that she had a very dark sense of humor, but it was something that I understood, especially having such a tragic past. I think that sometimes humor in a dark situation can be used to make yourself feel a little bit better, and I really truly understood that this character was doing that. I also really like the atmosphere of this, the setting. There's a creepy house that we're in. I was constantly wondering what was going to happen next. There's a scene in this that literally made me literally gag. I was like, what is going on? Why are we doing this? I don't like what's about to go down, but I also truly loved it, and I really thought this wrapped up the story really well. I was really engaged in it, and I can't wait to pick up more from Rachel Harrison. I definitely recommend this. Next up, I read Holy Sister for Backlist Book Club. This was a reread for me, and I expected it to get the same rating as it had before, and it really did that. I give this 4 stars the first time and 4 stars the second time. I don't have much to say about this series that I haven't already said. My love for this series really just comes from my love of the characters and Nona and following her story. I think this final book was just too short, which is why it doesn't get 5 stars from me, but I did love seeing all of the pieces come together and finally seeing how everything ended up and where the plot went. I think that this is a really good finale. I just wish it was longer. Truly, I just wish it was longer. There we go. If you want more thoughts, the Backlist Book Club live show shall be linked down below. And after that, we had a very much anticipated release for me, Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros, and I devoured this in 2 days. There is an entire vlog that is my reactions to this. If you have read Iron Flame, I definitely recommend going to check it out. I think it's a lot of fun. I shared every single thought I had during this with you guys, so you get to see me experience it, and I think it's a lot of fun to see someone else's thought process while reading a book. And I mean, I have a lot of strong emotional moments within that vlog. I did in the end give this one 4 stars. I didn't love it quite as much as Fourth Wing. However, I'm not surprised because it's the 2nd book in a 5-book long series, And if history goes to show, the second is typically my least favorite and the third is my favorite, so I'm excited to see if that pattern continues as we get into the third one. For me personally, this book was missing Xaden and Violet together and had some pacing issues for me, but I really just wanted to see the two bantering and having moments together. They have a lot of moments separated in this to enhance the plot forward, which typically I think is why I don't like a second book as much, is I find it is a very slow setup story in some ways, and it's just trying to put us to the places we need to be for the next book, and I truly think that that is what this book does. I'm really excited for the third one, although hesitant for reasons, but honestly, like, I still had so much fun with this one. I still loved our characters and was rooting for them and wanting to see moments of them. I was still smiling and laughing and crying at moments. I just overall think that this brings out the emotions of when you're first start reading. Like, my high school, my first reads, like Twilight and The Hunger Games, like those books that have lasting impacts on me, I think that this makes me feel the way those did as like a teenager reading for the first time. And I love that for myself, and I love that for anyone else who gets to experience it. If you haven't yet read Fourth Wing, what are you doing? Please read it. It is a romantasy that follows our main character, who is going to become a scribe when her mother forces her into being a dragon rider. This is the most difficult thing she can do. She will either survive training or she will die trying, essentially. The dragons in this have so much personality, and I really truly love them, and I just like love the enemies to lovers, rivals to lovers romance that happens in this. There's such good banter in this, and a trope that I love happens in this, and I just like incredible, amazing. If you haven't read the series and you like romantasy, please do. It's just like a fun time read. And after reading Iron Flame, I was stuck in a romantasy mood, so the next couple are very romantasy leaning. The next one that I read was Sparrow and Flame, which is the same author as The Song of the Marked. It is written by S.M. Gaither, and I liked this one a lot. I struggled at the beginning of this one because there was a lot of info dumping, and as I said earlier, this writer really strives with her character interactions and not necessarily being alone in the character setting up plot. And so the first 30% of this book, we don't get our love interest, and I struggled through those parts, but I knew I liked the banter in A Song of the Marked, so I wanted to wait this one out until I saw the love interest, and I don't regret it in any way. I had so much fun with these two. As they learn to not hate each other and then learn to love each other, I think that there was some strong moments in this story of discussing prejudice and hate, and the way that hate escalates to violence so easily, and you forget why you're actually doing things and you become someone that you're not. I really did truly love those discussions. I loved the found family elements of this. The gods themselves I thought were really cool. I liked the world building, and I'm really excited to get to the sequel. You don't know this is a prequel series to The Song of the Marked, but definitely can be read separately, as I haven't finished The Song of the Marked. And Sparrow and Flame is set like thousands of years before. We're following our main character, who, when she's young, watches her sister die by divine creatures, and for the rest of her life she is just trying to take down the gods when she comes face to face with the god of fire, and she pledges herself to him in order to take the gods down from the inside. I gave this one a 4 stars. I don't know if I said that. I really, really enjoyed it in the end. The next book I read was Kiss of Iron by Claire Sager. I sadly didn't enjoy this one as much as I wanted to. I think that Claire Sager's writing in it was really, really strong, but this one leaned a little bit too heavy into the romance and less into the fantasy. It is a fantasy romance. We have fae, we do have a little bit of magic, but I just wanted to see more of that and a little bit less of them. I am a slow burn girly at heart, and I wouldn't say this is a slow burn. They very quickly end up together doing some things in the sheets. I just overall struggled a little bit with this one. We're following our main character, who is about to lose her house, so she ends up making a deal with a fae and going to court to make another fae fall in love with her and like trick him, essentially. And that is what happens from there. There was some cool ball scenes, but I just wanted a little bit more tension and stuff in this one. I truly think if you're more of a romance girl than I am, you will like this, but I felt like the lack of fantasy really had me struggling in this one. I ended up giving it a 2 stars, sadly, but I do want to try more from Claire Sager, specifically her book in the Mortal Enemies to Monster Lovers series. I then read The Curse of Saints by Kate Dramis. I went into this expecting it to be a romantasy, and I do think it leans a little bit more to a YA fantasy romance. I thought it was setting up the archetypes and themes that some of my favorite YA fantasy has. There is no spice in this, and it was truly a lot about the plot more than the romance in this one. I typically like, in my fantasy romance, a little bit more of a 50-50 split, but when I thought about this as a YA fantasy, I thought it did an incredible job, and I'm really excited to see where the story goes. In this, we're following a society that, if you have magic, you can train to be one of the elite and maybe be one of the Queen's enforcers. And we follow our main character, who is the Queen's spy. We are also following a male POV as part of this Queen's elite force. He is like the real enforcer. Like, he does all of the torturing and things like that. These two characters have known each other for a really long time, but they've always been rivals because they've been fighting for spots in this Queen's Elite Force because they are ranked, and so I think she's like third and he's like second. So I really liked the setup between them, and there was a lot of bantering, and they were forced to protect each other because this Elite Force has like a blood oath to do that, but you could also see how they didn't always like each other and get along because they've been rivals this entire time. But within this society, we have a prophecy about someone who's going to have specific powers that will help mend the world again, and it's a YA fantasy romance. You probably already can guess who has these powers in the prophecy, and I really liked seeing how this unfolded. I think there was a lot of politics. We do have a bit of a love triangle in this. It was more of a love triangle where they were forced to have a love triangle, but you could tell two of them weren't really in the love triangle, if that makes sense, and that two were meant to be. I overall really enjoyed this one. I gave it like a 3.5. And I cannot wait to read the next one. I think it's going to be really intriguing to see where the story goes. After that, I read A Court This Cruel and Lovely by Stasia Stark, and I had the best time with this story. At first, I picked it up and I thought, oh my god, what am I reading? This feels so cringe. It was like any fantasy romance you've ever read before. I knew exactly where all the plot twists were going to be in this, everything like that. But I just laughed and smiled and giggled my way through the story. I had such a good time reading it that I ended up giving it a 4 stars. I was just so impressed with how captivated I became with this story as the time went on. The plot twist, even though it was predictable and not necessarily the most original story I've ever read, I was just in it. And I loved our two characters together. Their moments together, for me, really made this story. As I said, I was like blushing and giggling this entire time. I will definitely recommend this for people who are looking for a popcorn fanro, just something that you can listen to and smile and just like love. So I definitely enjoyed this one. In this story, we're following a world where as a baby, your powers are taken away from the gods and they are then returned to you at 25. However, for some people, something happens and the gods don't want your power and they don't take it away. And if they don't take it away, you have to hide that because you and your entire family will be killed when they find out, and they always find out when you turn 25. So we follow our main character, who of course has power still. She's coming up to her 25th birthday and she has to figure out how to escape and run away and insert a group of men. I say a group of men, but it is one love interest. It's not multiple, it's not a reverse harem, but the entire group of men, in my opinion, were fabulous characters and I really enjoyed them and the world building in this. After that, I moved on to The Coven by Harper L. Woods, and I didn't like this one. I ended up giving this book 1 star. I went into it, the first 30 pages, I was intrigued by the world building and the magic system, and to be fair, I think that there is a really unique story being told in the background of this, but there was so much I didn't like that clouded it. Our two love interests are instantly wanting to bang each other and touch each other and things like that. There was no slow burn, there wasn't even any chemistry for me in this one, where A Kiss of Iron at least had chemistry, in my opinion, between the characters, even though they banged really on. I saw no chemistry in this one. I thought this was crude for the sake of being crude. We have moments that make no sense to the plot, where it's just sexual for no reason, and it's my style of story that I just personally don't enjoy a story like that. I'm a slow burn girly. I want tension and I want everything to really matter and make sense, and I also just like really wrote off her MC as creepy really early on. He just watches her and undresses her while she sleeps, and I just thought that that was entirely creepy and not necessary to the story at all, and I hated that. I hated that so much. It made me so uncomfortable. I could not back these two at all, and that happens pretty early on in the story for me. So sadly, I probably should have DNF'd this one, but it was so short that I decided to finish it, and I kind of regret it. I do kind of regret it. I'm really glad if other people love it. Like, no shame to liking the things that you like, but for me, it personally didn't work for my reading taste and my style, just because, yeah, I'm not that type of reader. And after that, I thought I was done with fantasy romance, so I picked up Dreams of the Dying, which I have to read for Erin's book club, Busy Bee Book Club, which a live show is coming for that soon, and I will let you know the details when I have that. I gave this one 3 stars. I had very mixed feelings upon this one. There were some really interesting things that I liked and some things that I really disliked about it. In this story, we're following our main character, who is called to help The current king. The current king has fallen into sleep and will not wake up, and something is slowly draining the life force out of him. In this world, there is dream magic, so our main character sets out on a quest to find someone who can enter the dreams of the king and hopefully heal him. And the story goes on from there. To be honest, the story's a long one. It's like 700 pages, and for me, it did not need to be 700 pages. I think it could have been 200 pages. I thought the world building was cool, but I don't think anything ever gripped me. I don't think I ever got enough knowledge about things. I wanted to care about things, but I just felt like I didn't. I felt like I needed more depth to things, and there was just a whole lot of things happening that I feel like my attention was thrown out in so many different ways that I couldn't grasp onto anything, where I prefer when there's just like a couple strands in front of me that I can all attach to and love, versus just a million things happening that I'm like, where do I look? Where do my attentions lie? And that's kind of how I describe this book. Yeah, so I ended up giving this one 3 stars because I did have some things I really liked about it, just a lot of things I also didn't. So it's kind of like a middle of the road story. And I ended up picking up A Kingdom This Cursed and Empty, which is the sequel to A Court This Cruel and Lovely. I did really enjoy this one as well. I gave it 3 stars. I didn't like it as much as the first one, but this is a 4-book long series, and I kind of expected that going into this one, just because of what second books in a fantasy romance series typically are. There is always a betrayal at the end of book 1, and then book 2 tends to be about them coming back together and finding how to overcome that betrayal, and it also tends to push the plot a lot more forward, so I felt like this sequel was missing the moments of them together that I really wanted, and focused a lot more on the plot. And I did like the plot. I thought the plot was interesting, but it just didn't have those oh my god squealing moments that the first one had for me, so it did get a 3-star, but I do plan on continuing the series on. I can't wait to see how it ends. We do end on a cliffhanger as well, so I'm really intrigued to see how that goes. And after that, I picked up Powerless by Lauren Roberts, which is a YA fantasy romance reminiscent of The Red Queen and Hunger Games. There's definitely nods to both of those. Author is a big fan. She wrote this at 18, so I'm not going to sit here and tell you it is the best literature in the world. To be honest, I've never received more messages of people asking me if they should pick up a story after posting my vlog with this in it. I just had such a reaction to this story where I loved it so wholeheartedly, besides all its flaws. I gave this book 5 stars, but I think it is full of flaws. It is just a candy read for me. I don't think the world building is very good in this. I didn't really think the plot was that well thought out. I didn't even think the characters were, like, their romance was that, like, built upon. However, I loved it. I loved every aspect of it. I thought the world building that was there, I kind of liked the plot that was there. I really enjoyed. And the characters, their moments together were swoon-worthy in my opinion. I just think the lines were lining, the banter was bantering, the love was loving, and I was here for it all. So, I have mixed feelings when reviewing this because I give it 5 stars for vibes only, enjoyment only. I loved these two. I ended this book and I thought about it for the next day and a half in a reading slump that I could not read anything else because I just wanted to be with these characters again in this world, living through what the second book is going to be, because the ending of this literally truly broke me. It broke me. And I can't wait for book 2. But would I recommend it? I don't know. I think that you have to be in a very specific mood to read this story, to be in a specific headspace, to be wanting specific things, because this is a good time popcorn read in my opinion, not a well thought out story with, well, like, there are plot holes. The plot holes are plot holing as well in this, but I ate it up, truly, truly, truly. I needed to pop another bag of popcorn for this. But it meant that I ended November on such a high because this was my last read of November. And I'm still thinking about it. I need book 2 now. Like, I truly, truly need book 2 now. So thank you so much to Hannah from Hannah's Recent Reads, who recommended it to me. By recommending, I mean she put it on her Be Real, and I said, what did you give this? And she told me 4 stars, and I said, okay, I'm reading it. And then I bought it, and my patrons voted for it, and I got to read it and experience such an incredible story. I don't know what I'm saying. Thank you so much for watching my November wrap-up. It was filled with fantasy romance. I'm in a fantasy romance era of my life right now. I have been craving these sweet moments and these funny little bantering moments and all of that, so I'm always looking for more fantasy romance recommendations. So thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you made it all the way to the end of this video and you'd like to leave me an emoji to say you were here, leave me a flower emoji, because there's flowers on the cover of this. And then if you want to connect with me on other platforms, my Bookstagram, my Book Twitter, my Goodreads, and my Patreon are all linked in the description bar below.